Like Santa Claus, South Florida is coming to town for Miami this week. You better be on guard. But Miami's not Florida.
You are Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin, your daily podcast on all things college football. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On College Football. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you all so much for making this your first listen or your first view. Every day, it's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your daily source to stay up to date with the biggest stories in this, the greatest sport on planet Earth. Chaos at quarterback in Boulder. We'll talk about that. And is my guy Nick Arvin of Locked On Purdue sticking by his upset pick of USC? We shall find out. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes here to begin today's show because South Florida, America's team, you could forget the Cowboys, who cares? South Florida is a wagon at the moment. They rout Boise State. They stun Florida on their home field. They're still not leaving the Sunshine State as they go to Coral Gables this week, where, let me just throw this out there, Dono. South Florida is a 17.5-point underdog, according to our friends at FanDuel, against a Power 4 team in the top 10, 15 rankings of all of college football. They have a huge talent deficit, and they're going against a coach who has definitely never lost a game he shouldn't with superior talent before. That has never happened. I've never seen it before, so it would be a first. I understand how, given those data points, people could talk themselves into South Florida they're gonna push Miami. They're on upset alert. I'm actually not there. I'll explain why, but I want your thoughts on the game first. Hurricanes and Bulls. What a matchup this is between maybe the two best teams in the state of Florida. Who knows?
I mean, Miami they need to first and foremost avoid beating themselves, because there was definitely some of that with the Florida Gators. And I don't mean that to take anything away from South Florida, because that team has showed us through these first two games, both upset wins against top 25 opponents, that they are incredibly focused. They definitely have some athletes, even though they're not, technically one of the big three in the state of Florida, Miami, Florida State, UF. There's so much talent in this state in high school football. And Alex Golesh in his third year there has just done an incredible job, because that program, that USF program, was a laughing stock at the time that he took over. And he has them now at number 18 in 3 years. But again, there was a lot of Florida shooting themselves in the foot. You're spitting on people. You're getting too cute with your play calling, Billy Napier, in the second half when you should have been committed to the run. So if nothing else, Spencer, and like you mentioned, there's a talent deficit. Miami is obviously the more talented team in all phases on both sides of the football. If anything, the fact that USF just upset Florida gives Miami zero excuses whatsoever to overlook this opponent. I'm not saying they would have overlooked them anyway, but now you have zero excuses. And I think that, in a matchup where Miami's offensive line should have an advantage against USF's defensive line, I thought, and I was watching Florida, and their O-line was getting a lot of push. Don't know why they went away from the running game. I don't think Miami is going to get bored running the football the way Florida apparently did. If that's working for Miami, and Miami's actually going to have a boost at running back this week, Spencer, because Jordan Lyle, who was actually their starter against Notre Dame, got banged up in that game, didn't play in Miami's second game against Bethune-Cookman, because why would you play him if he was a little banged up for that game? Jordan Lyle's going to be back to go along with Mark Fletcher and Marty Brown, who have both played well so far. So Miami should have their three-headed running back attack back this week behind a good offensive line. And, I'm sure we'll talk about what USF's offense can do. But for Miami's offense against USF's defense, I think there's going to be a lot of emphasis on pounding the rock.
Yeah, my concern for South Florida in this game, Dono, is no surprise when you have a Power 4 G5 matchup, or, one conference has looked a lot better than another conference in the trenches. It is the trenches for me, because South Florida has been awesome through two games. Frankly, I don't think they're ranked high enough given what they have done. They beat Florida on the road. They housed Boise State. they are suffering in their rankings, and I'm sure we've all seen the clip at this point of one particular AP voter that still has Florida ranked. Oh boy, not a good look for the AP voting
and
process.
Move Florida up.
Move Florida up after they lose at home to South Florida and don't rank the bowls. I mean, holy smokes. And then when asked about it, she said, oh, well, I don't want to go into my process too much. Like, I don't know, we'd kind of like to know because this is having a real impact on the sport here. But, keep that stuff super secret, guys. It's a great look for college football. But anyway, my concern is that the name that most people know with South Florida is Byrum Brown, the quarterback, in addition to Alex Golesh, the head coach. And those two guys have been brilliant through the first two games. Situationally, they've done a lot of great things. Dono, can you tell me the name of South Florida's leading rusher this year?
It is also Byrum Brown.
It is indeed also Byrum Brown. I don't know how South Florida against Miami. I think you hit it on the head earlier when you said Florida shot themselves in the foot, spitting on a player, penalties, poor play calling and such. If Miami plays the way that they are capable, just even 80% of what they did against Notre Dame, I think they win and cover the 17.5. Because I think that this offense for South Florida has been opportunistic because of turnovers that their defense has forced. They haven't been super explosive or dynamic consistently. They got off to a slow start in the Boise State game and then started to play much better, but there were a lot of turnovers in that game they benefited from. If Miami doesn't overthink the room and doesn't turn the football over, I think they're winning this game by 20-plus points. I just have not seen enough from South Florida's offensive and defensive lines to make me think, yeah, they can go up and down the field against Miami on a consistent basis.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. Of course, there's a reason why we actually play the games, and you kind of have to wonder if that Cinderella story for South Florida continues. And I know from the Miami side, we had Miami's defensive coordinator Corey Heatherman had a media session yesterday, and they're really putting an emphasis on trying to limit quarterback Byrum Brown from running the football. To Brown's credit and to the credit of that entire team, I think that their offense is a little bit more dynamic than it was last year in terms of they have more of a passing attack, and they've got a couple of big receivers at 6'3 plus. And you mentioned like Brown leading them in rushing. It's good for him. It's not necessarily a good sign for the rest of their team because their running back core hasn't gotten going yet. Brown leads them with 109 rushing yards. So Miami's putting a lot of focus on trying to limit Brown from running the football. I took a look back at Corey Heatherman's defense at Minnesota last year before he arrived at Miami, and they kept quarterbacks in check in terms of running the football. Like probably the most run heavy quarterback they faced last year was against Nevada. They held him to 1 yard rushing. And, for what it's worth, Miami held Brown to 27 yards rushing last year. I take that with a grain of salt because both teams are so different. Miami's got a completely different defensive scheme, and I think USF is better than they were last year. But I agree with you. I think that as long as Miami doesn't have that game where they commit a bunch of turnovers, and for what it's worth, Miami hasn't turned the football over yet this season. Obviously, that's a little bit more impressive against Notre Dame than it is against Bethune-Cookman, but Miami is +4 on the season in turnover margin. So, Carson Beck has taken care of the football thus far and has looked really good at quarterback for Miami. Miami's running backs and receivers haven't had any fumbling problems or anything like that. So, this is a take care of business type of game for Miami. And again, there's no guarantee that they do that, but if you stack it up talent for talent and identity versus identity, Miami should have enough, especially at the line of scrimmage, to win this game.
Yeah, they should. And I do think I'm not going to, throw dirt on the outcome if Miami winds up dominating the game. I'd say South Florida's a pretty darn good team. This is a solid test. I don't think the biggest test they're going to face this year, but I do think it's a legitimate test, particularly the passing game. If I am Miami's defensive staff, I am full blown just saying, you know what, we're not gonna blitz a whole heck of a lot. We're gonna sit 7 or 8 in coverage all the time, and we're gonna trust our defensive line can win up front and keep 2 deep safeties and not let Byrum Brown get going, because if you allow the passing game to really start to get lethal for South Florida, that's where they're dangerous. They've got a couple of receivers, as you mentioned. Keyshawn Singleton this year has already got 168 receiving yards. And remember, that's against two good opponents. Like they can really do that. I think you have to force South Florida into a position where they feel like they have to run the ball, they have to try and establish that ground game, and then you just have to trust that your front four and front seven writ large are going to be able to get that done. Real quick, Don, do you have a score prediction for this one?
Yeah, I'm going to go. Let's say 31-17. Miami gets it done. So I guess I don't have them quite covering. I do think 17.5 is a big number for two ranked teams. So I'm going to stick with Miami winning by 2 touchdowns.
You make an interesting point. I mean, South Florida is a wagon. Have the odds fully caught up to the Bull? I'm going to save my pick here for my best bets on Friday's show. Alex Dono, Locked On Canes, great as always. I don't think it's great what's happening in Boulder right now. Colorado with a Friday night game, and they have no idea what they're doing. At least that's how it seems. First, this episode is brought to you by Mazda. Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS top safety pick awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breathwork, athletes sweat all the details. And Mazda brings this same intention to how they craft every model. And I am an incredibly detail-oriented guy. In my job, on the golf course, I'm all about the details. Mazda is too. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but everyday routines. From smooth handling to intuitive controls, Mazda's got all the details figured out just for you. Like your players, they sweat every single detail at Mazda, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes completely irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved. This episode also brought to you by our friends over at DoorDash. It's almost the weekend, time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down and start with Byron Brown, the quarterback at South Florida. How could you not be excited for that South Florida program? One that a long time ago was nationally relevant, top 5 and 10 in the BCS rankings way back in that crazy 2007 season. They have been falling down on tough times time and again, but Alex Golesh has really brought them back. And that is something that should be celebrated, because Byron Brown delivered for South Florida 2 weeks in a row. He's given the Bulls ranked wins, and he's looking for a third this week against the Miami Hurricanes. Just like he delivered for South Florida, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you could save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day. Only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo period through November 18th. Check out DoorDash and deliver your Saturdays. What is happening in Boulder? Nobody knows, but something's going on. We just don't know who's going to play quarterback on Friday night for the Buffs road game at Houston. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, is here to discuss. So 2 games, and then reports came out that Colorado is bailing on Kaidon Salter. And look, I was team Kaidon Salter is average, not great, but not terrible. And 2 games felt really early, and the reports came out that they're going to Ryan Staub, not Juju Lewis, the blue chip true freshman, and I understand why they wouldn't do that. But then Deion Sanders comes out and says, I didn't say that. I'm not saying who's the quarterback. You don't know. I don't know. Kevin, your read on what feels like a chaotic situation, and to me, it feels like an overreaction when we are not even a quarter of the way through the regular season.
Yeah, I think with Kaidon Salter, I was on team he could be really good, but he's solid. And through the first 2 games, he apparently had a fever against Georgia Tech, so that would explain some of his misses and just sort of miscues. I thought he did fine. Right, I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is a Heisman contender, but I wasn't like, oh my gosh, this guy stinks, right? And I think there was a lot of noise from outside in to sort of see what else could be done at quarterback, just because I think fans had this idea that Kaidon Salter was going to be the 2023 version of him, where it's like Conference USA MVP, best dual threat in the country kind of vibes, and that's just, I don't think that's who he is. I think that year is more of an anomaly more than anything now that we're seeing him in more action. That being said, they already made the weird decision to play 3 quarterbacks against Delaware. And it wasn't like, oh, they're blowing Delaware out. It was like we're rotating guys in. And Ryan Staub, quite frankly, looked the best, right? He was willing to take risks down the field, had a great pocket presence. He did force a throw that was almost picked off. But I just think there was more buzz around him. And I think when you play all 3 quarterbacks and you kind of hint that, like, hey, we're willing to make a change if one presents itself, I think now you've kind of cornered yourself into making a change. And I think when it comes to Deion denying Pete Thamel's report, I think it's just one of those things where I think he wants to be the one he wants to control the narrative, right? He doesn't want news to be broken on his behalf. They want Ryan Staub running out there to be the first time that anyone learns of it, because he said after the game he wasn't going to name a starter. He said he already had a plan, but he wasn't going to name a starter. But he did say he saw what we all saw, which was Ryan Staub play well. So I think he's just trying to do things his way, as we've learned he does frequently.
Yeah, I mean, I just didn't expect this to get so chaotic so quickly. Like, coming into the year, I think we all had the thought with Colorado, is there a short leash for Caden Salter because Juju is right there, and at some point would they want to make the change a la, what happened at Florida last year with Graham Mertz. Now that happened because of injury, but maybe it would have happened anyway with how things were going. But now Colorado has their first road game of the year. They lost to Georgia Tech. They beat Delaware. And look, maybe they're playing 3 quarterbacks because they're trying to see what they have. They know they can beat Delaware, and of course they did.
Right, yeah.
But now you've got a Big 12 game against Houston. Now you have to go on the road to a program that I'm pretty high on relative to what the national perception of them might be. I have them power rated coming into this season as a top half team in the Big 12, number 8. As a matter of fact, this is a game that is on the road, and I don't think that Colorado can afford to just go into Houston and say, we'll play this guy, play that guy. Maybe we'll give this guy another series. Maybe we'll throw the freshman in. Like, you can't do that against this Houston team, or it's going to get ugly. Cougars are favored, according to our friends at FanDuel, by up to 6.5 points now. I think the public kind of stretched that out once they heard all the quarterback news and chaos that we just discussed. But going into this game, it's got to be one guy, right?
Yeah, I would think so. I think that's a game that's cute to play against Delaware because, like you said, they knew they were going to win, right? Colorado gave up almost 400 yards of offense against Delaware and still held them to 7 points, right? So there's sort of that.
Not sure how to feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, not great. But at the end of the day, you can't do that moving forward, right? They have that saying about 2 quarterbacks where you have none. I don't know what the saying is about 3 because no one does it. Where it's like, if you have 3 quarterbacks, like how many do you have? Like,
do you have -1?
Do you have -1 or do you have 1? Right? I don't know. I think you have to ride with one, and I think you have to sort of go with that quarterback, whoever it is, until the wheels fall off, right? Unless it's Ryan Staub and he balls out great. Say it's Ryan Staub and he struggles mightily, and it's like, okay, you have to give him multiple games now, right? I don't think you keep flip-flopping throughout the season because I think that divides the locker room. I talked about this back when I thought the decision was between Salter and Lewis last week. I was like, you can't just constantly change things. Otherwise, people on the team start to form opinions, and it's like half the team wants this guy to start, half the team wants that guy to start, and the media saying this. Like, I think you're bringing yourselves more problems that you don't need. So I think you pick a quarterback, you stick with him, and I don't want to say hope for the best because I do think Salter and Staub both played well. I'm just saying I wouldn't want to continue to flip this because I don't know. I mean, it gives me – this is a weird comparison, but does anyone remember the name DeShone Kizer and Malik Zaire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Notre Dame back in the day.
Right. Cardale or JT, which that was off a championship season. But that DeShone Kizer, Malik Zaire team, it was like we have 2 guys. They're both really good, and then the team ended up being terrible. It was like, okay, well, did you really have 2 guys? Did you? And I don't think Colorado wants to find itself in that position because I think they could be a good team. I just think they need something to go steady.
Yeah, and it just doesn't feel at the moment like they have that. And here's the other thing. It's one thing to make a change because you feel like a change needs to be made. 2 games? I mean, really 1 game because they played all those guys against Delaware. Colorado gave Caden Salter 1 game against a Georgia Tech program that anybody who maybe covers college football on a daily college football podcast all year round, knew was a better team.
Yeah.
And yeah, you lost on your home field. It didn't look great. Okay, that's great.
Yeah.
You can't give a guy You can't give a guy one game, just going back and forth. I'm not a fan. So let's get to this matchup with Houston on Friday night. That is going to be, I think, a really fun game to watch, but I think a tough one for Colorado to win. Connor Wegman on the other side has not lit the world on fire at quarterback. He hasn't needed to because the Cougars are running for almost 200 yards a game through their first two matchups. Granted, it was against Stephen F. Austin and Rice. They did not lose to Food. That's good, not violating Josh Pate's rule number 1. But I look at what Colorado had in the game against Georgia Tech defensively and then against Delaware, and I go, boy, Connor Wegman might only need to go for 170 yards passing in this game, and they still might be able to win. That's the number one key for me to going into this game, even more so than figuring out the quarterback situation. If you're on the road and you're getting demoralized by a ground game to the tune of almost 200 yards and Georgia Tech went for over 300, I don't think Colorado has a shot.
Yeah, I think Colorado's been tough to read on defense, honestly. That Georgia Tech game, they forced 3 turnovers in the first 3 possessions, which was like, oh, great. Then they didn't do anything on offense, right? But I think the thing that really hurt them against Georgia Tech was not being able to stop Haynes King and Connor Wegman. That's not his game, right? Haynes King just ran all over Colorado. I think he had like around 20 rushing attempts, and his wear and tear on NCAA would have been solid red. And he didn't play the next game. Shocker. So I think Colorado can slow down the rushing attack if it's running backs. I think rushing quarterbacks mixed in there makes it a little more difficult. But yeah, I think if they can't stop the run, that's going to be a huge problem for them all year, because I'm not going to say Houston has a bad run game or a great run game, but they're solid. But I do know that Colorado has better run games down the road. And if you can't stop Houston and you can't stop Delaware and you can't stop Georgia Tech from running the ball, it's going to be a long season. And I think the key is making Connor Wegman beat you with his arm, right? Because he hasn't really, throughout his career, he hasn't shown that he could do that. We could go back to the Texas A&M days. He has not been the quarterback that's going to throw for 400 yards and beat you. He's not Josh Hoover, we'll put it that way, where he's going to throw for 400 yards, or Sawyer Robinson, however you say his name, and throw for 500 yards and 5 touchdowns and will your team to victory. That's not his game. It hasn't been yet. So make Houston try to win that way. And I think that's Colorado's key to success there.
Sawyer Robertson.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's we're all about getting names just perfectly right. Do you ever?
Sorry, Robert. Sorry.
Yeah, you said definitely said Robinson, like Zach Robinson or something. Big 12 legend, a quarterback there. Do you have a game score prediction yet for this weekend? I've got Houston winning. I'll take them 31-14. I do not like what's going on with Colorado at the moment.
Yeah, it's hard to come up with a prediction, because I think going into the game before all this, I was like Colorado 28. Houston 24, close one, not too exciting offensively, but now I'm kind of on the bubble. I feel like I'm gonna plead the fifth, but I do think Colorado wins or can win. But right now I'm trending towards picking Houston. I don't have a score prediction because I need to see the adjusted odds. I do. I feel like they're gonna keep fluctuating with all this drama.
Probably. You're probably right on that front. Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, great as always. Could we see the stunner of the week? Purdue over USC. I say what now? First, this episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The NFL season is here. College football is here. And if you want to make those games more exciting, FanDuel is the place to go. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. $300. You just got to be right. And if you think you know as much as some of you profess to know down in the YouTube comments, well, hey, this should be a really easy thing for you to do. You check out FanDuel, where you can bet college football, you can bet the NFL. Every game is available. You've got everything you could possibly want. You've got point spreads. You have got win totals, or point totals, I should say. You had the chance to bet win totals, but now you can shift into in-season stuff, which frankly is a lot more fun. So if you're ready to play, download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. Check them out at FanDuel.com. This episode also brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments, and when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That is why there is Monarch Money, an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy to use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives like me or you. If you've put off organizing your finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. You want to condense it all into one place and hit financial goals? Monarch is the way to do it. Don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with the code LOCKEDONCollege. Check them out at monarchmoney.com. Could it actually happen? Nick Arvin of Locked On Boilermakers has made one of the boldest predictions that I have encountered the entire year here on Locked On College Football. He's here to talk about the take he gave during the offseason, in which he thought that Purdue, week 3, would stun USC on their home field. And guess what, Nick? It's game week against the Trojans. So I'll start with the most important question. Are you sticking to your guns on this one?
I feel like I have to stick to my guns, Spencer. I'm not nearly as confident as I was when I did give that take, just because of how good USC has looked. That offense looks like one of the best offenses in the nation, especially in the Big Ten. Jaden Maiava is looking to be a Heisman candidate this year. He throws her 400 yards last week against Georgia Southern. So I'm definitely more concerned about where Purdue stands going into this matchup. They open up as 21-point dogs, so obviously a large hill to climb. But I am under the impression that if Purdue can stay competitive in this game, don't let that USC offense get big plays. Don't let them get a lead early. If you're able to stay competitive, stay close at your home field at Ross-A, which has been electric so far this year, anything can happen.
Yeah, this game being at home is important for Purdue. And Barry Odom, like another head coach that just got a signature win, Jeff Lebby over at Mississippi State in the SEC, is looking for just that, a signature win. Every coach in his first year or in his second year is looking for that moment. When you don't have one of those, your fans start to turn on you because they go, what exactly do we have to feel good about here? Well, Mississippi State's got that. Barry Odom could buy the emotional investment of every single Boilermaker fan or adjacent Boilermaker fan in the state of Indiana if he could find a way to win this game. USC has played 2 inferior opponents, most recently Georgia Southern. They have looked really good. By the way, I don't think that's something that you knock and say, oh, well, they haven't played anyone. I've watched Clemson struggle with Troy. I have watched Penn State struggle with FIU. When you look good against inferior competition, I say, oh, so you look like the way a good team should look. Let's start with the USC passing offense. This has to be the primary focus. Not that the Trojans haven't shown ability to run the ball, and that's been an underrated thing for Lincoln Riley's teams over the years. But if Jaden Maiava is hot, I just don't see how this Purdue offense keeps up.
I mean, I agree with you to a certain extent. I think that, especially from the defensive side of the ball, that secondary is not going to be able to compete with Jaden Maiava. That's just kind of the reality of the situation. USC has the better players. Purdue brings in so many different guys. They're still trying to get used to playing together. And that's something that we have seen. So for Purdue, the only way that you stay in this ballgame, the only way that you have a chance of upsetting USC is if you keep your offense on the field. You have to win that time of possession battle, and you can't lose the turnover battle. I would say that you have to win both of those 2 categories in order to stay competitive against this team. You have to continually have these long drives, assert the run offense early so that you're not one-dimensional, so that you're not forcing Ryan Brown to try to air balls down against a talented USC secondary. It's going to be a big task for Purdue to pull it off, but they have to win those 2 categories. They have to win the time of possession. They have to win that turnover battle. And then I think if they do that, anything can happen. Yeah,
a shootout is not the way that Purdue goes and stuns the world here and slows USC's roll. Here's another way of looking at it, and it's in the same vein that you're thinking about this matchup, Nick. According to our friends at FanDuel, the over-under in this game is 58.5. If that over is hitting, no shot. No, that has to be someone who takes that particular prop bet has to be not sweating on under 58.5 by the fourth quarter. If they are able to do that, all right, it could get interesting. But if you get over 58.5, 45 of those points might be belonging to USC. And that math probably doesn't add up. But one of the reasons that you're confident about Purdue and their ability to at least hang around with the Trojans at this spot is the Purdue running game. Now, you haven't played anybody good through the first 2 weeks, granted, but how are you feeling about the Boilermakers offense so far in Barry Odom's first 2 games?
I honestly feel pretty good. And just to go back to your point, the one thing I did want to mention about this matchup, USC has everything to play for in this game. If they lose this game against Purdue, you said Lincoln Riley, he's going to be in a Kalen DeBoer spot. He's going to be in a Napier spot. He's not going to be very loved by the Trojan faithful. If Purdue loses this game, it's just another Saturday. They're not expected to win this one, but if they are somehow able to win this one, it would mean the world. So Purdue, they can lose this game. USC cannot. So I think that's a lot more pressure on USC than Purdue at home. But back to your point about running the football, we've seen that Devin Mockabee has really stepped up and been solid this year. He's been good his previous 3 years, but he really has something to prove in his senior season. Under Ryan Walters, he had a lack of production from his freshman year. His freshman year was kind of his most productive year, but this year could top that. He goes for over 120 yards last Saturday against Southern Illinois. Obviously, that is Southern Illinois, but Barry Odom wants to run the offense through Devin Mockabee, and within that, the play action starts to open up. With Ryan Brown, that connection with Armand Branch has always been electric, but when you go into Big Ten play, that's not always going to be there. You have to assert that run offense early and create a multi-dimensional offense that can eventually open up the passing game, but that all starts on the legs of Devin Mockabee.
Talk about the Purdue defense. This USC offense has looked explosive, dynamic. The stats are just as impressive as the game tape if you've watched the Trojans at all this year. I mean, Mekhi Lemon is lighting the world on fire, no surprise. You've got Jaden Mayava, who looks like a guy that Lincoln Riley was perhaps correct to pick over Miller Moss, who has not been stellar so far for the Louisville Cardinals, who have struggled to a couple of wins. But this Purdue defense, do you think there is any way? I think they have to at least hold USC to 20. I think it's got to be 24 points or fewer. I really do, because I think the USC defense is underrated because it's Lincoln Riley. They can't play defense. Dan Tinlin's good. They've got a couple of guys. Eric Gentry is still there. Kamari Ramsey's still there. This is a solid USC defense that is going to be well coordinated and well schemed. But that Purdue defense, I think the number's 24. I think that's about the most that Purdue could get in this game.
I mean, that's absolutely fair. And I would say the most important spot on that Purdue defensive side of the ball is the linebacker core. They have stepped up against Ball State. They get a shutout. They get some luck with 2 missed field goals in that one. But a shutout week 1 was absolutely huge for Purdue football because last year, even against opponents like that, they didn't find that success. And so the defensive side of the ball has definitely stepped up from the linebacker cores. A guy by the name of Manny Powell, he played for Barry Odom at UNLV, but he's really stepped up at that linebacker position. Records a huge sack week 1 against Ball State all over the field, was able to stop the quarterback run that Ball State had planned up. Wasn't as great against Southern Illinois, but still did a good job stopping the run. And then Sanders Ellis, a Tennessee State transfer, another big leader at that linebacker core. That linebacker kind of group is going to be so pivotal to contain this USC offense and to really limit what they're going to be able to do Saturday.
I will just throw this out there for the Purdue faithful as an olive branch before I give you my score prediction and Nick gives his. Alabama last year, favored by about 22 points on the road at Vanderbilt. Took the loss. Ohio State on the road at Michigan, favored by 20 to 21 points. Somewhere in that range, they lost the game outright. So don't let a point spread deter you from thinking craziness can happen. That said, I've got USC 37 to 10. Not one of my best bets this week because USC's going on the road for the first time and the environment will be rocking. But yeah, I don't have any major worry about the Trojans here.
So from my perspective, like I said, I'm going to stand by my guns. So there's a great chance that Purdue goes into this one, they get absolutely blown out. I know going into this one, that is a possibility against a strong USC offense. But I do think that if Purdue is able to do those two things, win the turnover battle, win the time of possession, they'll be able to at least keep this game lower scoring and stay competitive in this one. If they're able to do those two things, I'll say, just for the sake of my take, that they'll pull it out 27-24. What I think likely does happen, though, is that Jaden Maiava and that USC offense comes to town and kind of limits what Purdue's able to do, and I'll say 35-17 in the case that Jaden Maiava and the USC Trojans just come with a chip on their shoulder.
Nick Harvin, Locked On Boilermakers. Great as always. That'll do it for us today. Appreciate everyone listening. I will see you next time. And until then, hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.